Edward, could I ask you about meeting Tobias Schneebaum, where you met him, and what he was like?
I met Tobias at Yaddo, and it must have been the early 50s when Tobias was just back from the jungle. Oh no, maybe it was just before he went to the jungle. I don't remember. He was back from Mexico, I think. That's it.
Yeah.
He had been years in Mexico, where he did go into the jungle in Guatemala, I guess, on the border of the Yucatan,
Yeah.
Guatemala. And he was a painter. People don't always remember that he was really quite a well-known painter who had shows at the Peru Gallery uptown. And at Yaddo, he was part of a gay group. Yaddo was divided into the Rocks and the Flints, as a woman from Massachusetts whose husband taught in a private school, a boys' school, explained to us that everybody's divided in, you're either rock or a flit, as the students were. And we were obviously flits, though I didn't like to be exclusively with the flits, because the rocks were also very interesting. You met a lot of interesting people again. But Tobias was having an affair with a peppy little bantam rooster of a guy named Dudley Hopper. And he would follow Dudley around, and Dudley would be marching forward, and Tobias would, two heads taller than him, would follow after in his graceful, floating way. He was such a, to think of him when he was old and crippled, it's amazing how graceful he was as a young man and walked so beautifully. No wonder all the savages fell in love with him. And so, did I pose for him? I can't remember if I did sit for various artists. I was never shy about taking my clothes off. And people liked to paint me or draw me. And that began it. And then, I guess then it was that Tobias went to the Amazon and wrote his sensational book, Keep the River on Your Right.
Not till like 14 years later, right?
Was it?
Like, I think the book came out in 68 or 69.
Oh, yeah, but he had been there earlier. He didn't write that for a while.
54, 55.
Yeah, yes, right after I knew him at Yaddo. And through the years I would meet him because he lived on First Avenue and 2nd Street, where in a floor of a tenement building where Norman Mailer also lived. So there were always stories about him and Norman. And I visited there. I guess there was a party I went to. And through the years, we always saw each other. It was a very odd. It just met him in the arts world. Maybe. I remember going once to a show at the Peru Gallery where you had all jungle paintings, and hidden in the foliage of the trees was often the eyes of a jaguar, or the spots. You could see the spots through the leaves. Very, very exotic. And then we both ended up at Westbeth as in our older years. And then, of course, we saw a lot of each other. Before he died, we saw a lot of each other.
Could you describe his apartment for me? What his apartment was like, Tobias's apartment?
He had decorated his apartment with all the artifacts he collected in the different exotic locales he'd been. There was some Latin American stuff from his years in Mexico, but just a little. I think they were kind of like religious heads, carved religious heads. But then there was stuff from the Amazon, but the most of it was from New Guinea, the jungle, the primitive, the Stone Age people he ended up really being adopted by. It's very strange that he always said that his Hasidic family, religious family rites were far more exotic and colorful than the jungle rites. The way they held their ceremonies, various ceremonies of death, marriage, all the different stages of life. But he had all the carvings, shields. The shields dominated the walls. And for me, the two magic figures were two mud dolls. They were figures about 15 inches high, maybe 2 feet. And they were made of straw and mud with shells, bone, hairs of different creatures, hardened into the mud. The mud had hardened like clay. And it was a man and a woman. Definitely a man on one side, because a friend photographed from underneath, and you could see the genitals. They had really done these magic figures. They were really quite powerful. And a friend who stayed there, and then he had a shelf of skulls, decorated skulls by the medicine man did them, I think. And they had ancestor skulls. And when he became a member of the tribe, they gave him these ancestor skulls so he would be connected. A friend of mine who slept in Tobias's apartment once couldn't take them and covered them with towels. She couldn't live with them. They were too powerful.
They were literally, the men would literally use their father's skull as a pillow.
Oh.
And so you could see that the skulls had the oils of another human being sleeping.
Oh, really?
You know how a pillow gets dirty?
Yes,
The
and whatever happened to those skulls, I don't know. I don't think they went to the Metropolitan Museum with Tobias's collection because they are human remains.
Yes.
That is a key prohibition.
Yes, they wouldn't take them.
And so what has his nephew done with those skulls is a mystery. And I have a friend who's tried to buy them and tried to contact the nephew, but has never succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be a good idea. That's Jesper
Yeah.
wants to buy them.
Let's see.
After Tobias's death, I was looking after the apartment while Tobias was in a nursing home. And after his death, I kept going up to check things out. And I came up one day, and the Metropolitan Museum staff were there, cutting cardboard boxes. They had sheets of corrugated cardboard, and they were cutting them so they'd make sheets that made boxes for each shield and each object to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And they tagged everything, and they delivered them to the museum.
I think that's good.